Doink. Okay, so what are some of the benefits of having a college degree? Having a college degree can prepare you for a job later in your career that has opportunities for advancement, which leads to better pay and better benefits. And in today's society, it's basically really necessary for success in life. But paying for student loans is a little bit troublesome. More and more students are having to borrow loans, and the repayment of them is leading to bankruptcy. However, bankruptcy does not affect student loans, and this needs to change. Congress needs to change bankruptcy laws to apply to student loans. So to support this, I'm going to explain some of the basics of bankruptcy, how it applies to student loans, and how current student loan debt is affecting graduates. According to the United States Courts.gov, bankruptcy is defined as a legal procedure for dealing with debt problems of individuals and businesses, specifically a case filed under one of the chapters of Title 11 of the United States Code, also known as the Bankruptcy Code. They also say that bankruptcy helps people who can no longer pay their debts by getting a fresh start, by liquidating assets to pay their debts, or by creating a repayment plan. Liquidation means that they sell the debtor's assets, and the proceeds from the sale go to the creditors or the people who are demanding payment. And liquidation is what Chapter 7 consists of. And whenever they talk about repayment, that's what Chapter 13 consists of, which is individual debt adjustment. It is based off of your earnings, and you can create a repayment plan to pay on your debts for between 3 to 5 years. There are other options whenever it comes to filing for bankruptcy, and one of those is a discharge in bankruptcy. And that is defined as the debtor is no longer legally required to pay any debts that are discharged. That's a very basic explanation of bankruptcy. But some of the ways that it applies to student loans, or how does it apply to student loans? Currently, the only way that you can get student loans discharged is by a discharge in bankruptcy. This can be difficult to achieve, and you have to prove that you and your dependents are going to suffer an undue hardship, according to the Student Loan Borrower Association. Student Loan Borrower Association goes on to say that the courts use different tests to evaluate whether a particular borrower has shown undue hardship. The most common test for this is the Brunner test, and this is based off of a court case from 1987 titled Marie Brunner versus New York State Higher Education Services Corporation. And the Student Loan Borrower Association quoted, and I'm quoting too, from that case, based on legislative history and decisions of other district and bankruptcy courts, the district courts adopted a standard for undue hardship, requiring a 3-part showing: 1, that the debtor cannot maintain, based on current income and expenses, a minimal standard of living for herself and her dependents if forced to repay the loans; and 2, that additional circumstances exist indicating that the state of affairs is likely to persist for a significant portion of the repayment period of the student loans; and 3, that the debtor has made good faith efforts to repay the loans. Student Loan Borrower Association also gives some examples of successful cases that have had student loans discharged. Example A: a 50-year-old student loan borrower earning $8.50 an hour as a telemarketer was granted a discharge. The courts agreed that the borrower had reached maximum earning capacity and did not earn enough to pay the loans and support minimal family expenses, and appeared to be trapped in a cycle of poverty. Example B: a number of courts have granted discharges in cases where the borrower did not benefit from the education or went to a fraudulent school. Example C: most courts have found that borrowers do not have to be at poverty level income to prove undue hardship. A 2014 court case described a minimal standard of living as somewhere between poverty and mere difficult. So we do realize that there is an option for relief, provided that you can prove an undue hardship. Well, let's take a look at how student loan debt is currently affecting graduates. According to the the Department of Institute for College Access and Success, 7 in 10 seniors, which is 68% who graduated from public and nonprofit colleges in 2015, had student loan debt with an average of $30,100 per borrower. And that's a 4% increase from the average of 2014 graduates. I have also known people that have had a lot more student loans than that. Some of them have been up to $100,000 and possibly more. It could be higher than that depending on how much the school costs and whether or not you're applying for the maximum amount of loan available with each time you apply for the loan. So let's calculate those two loan differences. The $30,100, if you divide that by 15 years and then divide that by 12 months, you get $167.22 a month without interest. For the $100,000 loan, if you divide that by 15 years, then by 12 months you get $555.56 a month without interest. That's a big difference, and it's still a lot of money. But we haven't even gotten to living expenses, so let's discuss that. A 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, according to a lot of people that I know who own or rent apartments, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath on average costs them about $850 a month. That's not including your monthly rent, your monthly utilities, bills and groceries or anything like that. Now, if you add the student loan debt up with that, you get around $1,000 to $1,500 that you have to pay every month. And this might be one of the reasons why a lot of millennials are now living with parents more than they did previously. According to Pew Research Center, 2014, for the first time in more than 130 years, adults ages 18 to 34 were slightly more likely to be living in their parents' home than they were likely to be living with a spouse or a partner in their own home. They also said that 32.1% were living with parents, while 31.6% were living in their own house with a partner or a spouse. And this obviously makes a lot more financial sense if you're taking into account how much it would cost to live on your own with your student debt and with all your other monthly expenses. Also, I haven't even mentioned whether or not that college graduate got a paid internship or a job at the end of graduating. So overall, the debt amount is high, the cost of living is high, and moving in with parents or a spouse or a significant other makes a lot of sense. But what happens if your debt becomes too much? Well, if you have to file for bankruptcy, then all of the debt that you're trying to get relinquished should be gotten rid of, including the student loans. The United States courts says bankruptcy is supposed to provide a fresh start to debtors. How can it be fresh if the student loans aren't even considered in the bankruptcy plan and you cannot prove undue hardship? And also the Brunner test is based off of a 1987 court case, which is really old, and a lot has changed since then, and the laws need to change as well. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Bill Clinton. It turns out that advancing equal opportunity and economic empowerment is both morally right and good economics, because discrimination, poverty, and ignorance restrict growth, while investments in education, infrastructure, and science and technological research increase it, creating more jobs and new wealth for all of us. And I have to show my cards.